sick. I just had my
You're the
bachelor's.
president.
Little tired.
Okay.
Also, but I took today off.
Also,
I'm
Oh,
a
okay.
project manager, superintendent.
I don't know.
Contractor, I build.
We can do it later.
Oh, I thought it was a meeting to start.
It is, okay.
Really?
Yeah, okay. Started out, okay. I will call the meeting to order, the Water, Wastewater, Utilities Committee meeting, the first meeting we have with a new title.
Yeah, I wanted to, thank you for pointing that out. I wanted to go over just a couple of things that have changed here in the recent past, particularly for Eric's benefit.
Okay,
One, we've had a name change of this committee because there was some confusion. It's been known historically as the Facilities Committee.
Okay.
And there was a little confusion that came up at the last meeting about what the role of the committee was. And so we brought this item to the board, and the board opted to keep the committee, keep the role of the committee the same, but for clarity, change the name to Water and Wastewater Utilities Committee.
Okay.
So most of the items that come before this committee should be water and wastewater related. And then at the last meeting, the committee appointed a chair and a vice chair. But since that time, the Pam Giardini, one of our board members, has resigned off the board. And so her seat on this committee is technically vacant. Our procedures are to have the board president back up any vacancy, anyone who cannot make a committee, any other board member who cannot make a committee. So that's why the board president, Navi Fardanish, is currently serving in that role.
Okay.
And it's unknown if how that'll get reshuffled. I expect that the board would consider making some committee appointment changes once the board positions are refilled. But you know, we'll see when that occurs. I mean, that's supposed to occur in just a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So.
okay, I don't see any public, is there any public on Zoom? No, okay, so we won't have any public comments, so moving right into the agenda, the first item, the Plattswell June water quality issue.
Okay, and then one more thing that I just neglected to mention is typically Justin Black would be attending these meetings, but he's out ill today. So we'll do our best to speak up on some topics, and some might be shorter. Not because Justin's a long talker, but just because he was the lead on some of these issues.
Sure.
Okay, on the Plattswell issue, I just wanted to just provide a little context for what occurred. The board members know that we had a problem on June 6th, or the first week of June, late in that first week, though the well had just been put online for the summer sort of higher demand season, pumping season, at the beginning of that week. And then late in the week, we started getting some water quality complaints. I believe it was a Thursday. And staff, because of those complaints, had investigated the well and learned that we were getting chlorine residuals that were quite a bit higher than expected, not beyond state maximums, but more than what we need for that well site. Didn't know why that was happening initially, so the well was shut down, and we purged or flushed the northern part of the water system. So the industrial area along Ramada, Country Oaks subdivision across the freeway off Theater Drive, and some of the areas around Peterson Ranch, because that's the primary area that would get water directly from that well. The Platts well is located up near the 46 West interchange, kind of behind Delta Propane, that area. So the well's been off since. That water quality complaint, within a couple of days, we started learning that the water quality concerns were not solely related to high chlorine residual. We had cloudy water conditions that, within a day or so, determined were sort of like a silt, a sandy condition in the water. We did have maybe 15 or so complaints between the Thursday and Friday from people in that area. We advised them to flush their system. Some of the industrial users was pretty noticeable, the water quality concerns, because they utilize the water in their manufacturing process. By early the following week, we learned the higher chlorine residual was really a result of the analyzer that adds chlorine being unable to read the water, kind of got gunked up with this silty material. So that's why the higher levels of chlorine were being injected. It wasn't a faulty injector, it was, unable to do its job because of this sanding. The wells remained off. We did do some testing, 1 week ago, last Tuesday, with the pump company and our hydrogeologist, and I think at least the preliminary result, I haven't seen the final results, but the preliminary results were, yes, there's a lot of sand coming out of the well. Well, not a satisfactory amount, not something we could put back in service short of an emergency. So our near-term plan is to, actually, the pump was pulled, I believe, last week. Pump was pulled last week. The well is now in a state of rest to enable us to video. We put a camera down the well and try to determine what kind of problems exist. There's probably something not insignificantly wrong with the well, but it would be kind of difficult to forecast what that is. Could be a fairly minor problem, but still needs repair, or it could be a more significant problem. So we're gonna know more by middle of next week, if the video is conclusive. And then we'll work with our hydrogeologist to develop a plan to correct the well. We don't yet have a time frame. We don't know what's wrong, so we don't know what we'll need to do to correct it. There are some things that can be done inside well casings if if the problem area is limited in nature. But it could be more significant. Just don't know at this time. The well did have a significant well failure about 12 years ago that required extensive repair. So it's possible it's got a well casing. I mean, we should not have this kind of sandy material coming out. So there's definitely an issue. So we'll keep you posted. Right now the well is off. We're planning on it. We're not expecting it to be available to us in the near term. We've done some analysis of our projected demands, and we can meet those demands without a critical situation, unless something critical happens to another major producing well or multiple smaller producing wells. Not super excited about the current forecast. Our peak demands go up when we have sustained hot weather, and that's what we're facing. So, yeah, it doesn't look.
Usually June was cooler than normal, so it's held off. Usually our peaks are in June.
It varies, it's the hot weather. We really haven't, and remember, our peak demands are really quite a bit lower than they were even a decade ago. People have altered their landscaping or changed their expectations of just how green the grass has to be. So we were a 3 million gallon a day peak day system, back in 2007 and in that era. And now we're like a 2.1 million gallon a day peak system. And last year we never exceeded 2.1 million gallons a day. So
That's why we have the buffer too, right?
Yeah, the buffer helps us with the, big picture supply, but yeah, we have, this really is a peak demand issue when the well fills, because it's a significant producing well, so it's able to meet a lot of demand. But our forecast is still we're gonna be good, and we will keep you posted. I'll keep the board certainly posted. If we lose another resource or we have to alter our plan significantly, we are planning for some messaging, just standard conservation messaging. We haven't done that yet this year, so we'll get that information out, although timing wise, it wasn't great because our next utility bid doesn't go out until almost the end of July, so we'll be halfway through the season. But nonetheless, we'll do some reminders of the ongoing permanent conservation requirements. For example, cannot irrigate, spray irrigation between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. That's a permanent restriction. Or wastewater by washing down surfaces like the hose. You have to use like a water broom or a pressure device. There are requirements to make repairs within a certain period of time. And there's also can't wash a car unless you have a shut-off valve, use a bucket or have a shut-off valve, those kind of basic things. So we're stepping up our messaging, but not cause for panic, but just wanted to bring up to speed on what's going on with Platts. It's interesting, we're working on the replacement Platts River well too, so we'll be meeting with property owner tomorrow. I hope,
Yes.
and yeah, just we'll keep you posted if anything changes, but expect that well to get available for at least a period of time.
Can I ask a couple questions just for my own knowledge? So how many wells does the Templeton area have? And what is the current, output of those wells that are off and on? And then I'm just kind of trying to get a feel for, like, use 2.1 million gallons a day. You have 20 wells and we can produce 3 million gallons a day, but fiber ops, we're producing 2.5 million gallons.
Well, we're gonna produce what the demand is.
Okay.
So the wells are on an automated system. When the tank levels drop below a certain level, the wells come on in the sequence. And when the tank levels reach their maximum, the wells go off in a certain sequence. And so it's just responsive, right? So like if we use 2.5 million gallons, we would pump 2.5 million gallons, because that's unless we were physically unable to. But the goal is not to run these wells 24 hours a day.
Sure.
They don't respond well to that kind of
Do you want me to
workload.
grab some maps? So
Yeah, I don't have,
Yeah.
like, your questions, I wasn't prepared with all that information. We've got a lot of reports on, like,
Yeah,
all
you
the
have-
various wells and their capacity.
Yeah, and I don't need that information, and I know we got a bunch of stuff to cover. I just wanted to get a general feel for what we got, what the impact is, and not that there's any decision to be made at this time. It's more of a for informational only, but it'd just be curious. Okay, so you got that one, and then there's, fancy dancy well 3 fails, and then now your guys are.
Yeah, really, even to describe the wells of capacity wouldn't be super helpful, because our wells draw from different sources.
Yeah.
So we have wells that draw from the underflow of the river, which has license and permit water and riparian water, but not our groundwater,
Yeah,
or what we call groundwater. Then we have groundwater wells, and then we also have wells that are these same river wells that pump our our percolated treated wastewater, as well as the Nacimiento water. So all these various sources that are not available by, you couldn't just turn on another well and access one of those other sources.
absolutely. Well,
So but we have 3 wells that are also we have listed as standby. They're basically emergency use only wells, because they don't produce either good quality water or they don't produce much water.
yeah,
And so we haven't gone to the steps of activating those or anything,
Sure.
because they're just, we haven't seen the need to do so,
absolutely.
but we have other options in place.
Water in the state of California is very complex. My dad negotiated some water contracts, and the way it all works is you could have a full-time job if you just understood how water moved in the state of California.
Yeah, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, I guess.
Oh, yeah,
So, yeah, I can.
Well, I'll
I
just
can
say,
email you.
Jeff, is one of the things that Justin was mentioning is that we're not pumping at full capacity in the wells that we're using right now. You're pumping out like 14 hours a day at the most. And, the demand hasn't been huge in June, so we can go up to almost 24 hours a day if needed for part-time, but usually we don't try to push it. So there's still
You got a
capacity
good
in the
buffer
wells
right now.
that we're using right now without turning on additional.
Yeah, we have enough wells running to meet our needs, but again, the demand, we've been like today, or yesterday's pumping was like 1.7 million. So we're still, some distance below what we would expect our peak to be, and I'd say if, we had this meeting a week from now, we'd probably have a bigger number to talk about.
Yeah,
Just because of the weather we have this, this sustained heat wave coming, it looks like, and so that if it's sustained, if it really is 5 or 6 days of over 100 degrees, some people will make adjustments to their irrigation just to kind of keep their plants from dying or suffering. So yeah, I think we're gonna be, we're gonna hit our summer high this week so far, almost certainly.
great.
So, but we'll keep the committee and obviously if there's actions that if we have a specific recommendation that we need action on, we'll bring it back to the committee. Or to the board, depending on what's necessary for this well. It's an important asset, because it's a pretty significant producer, so
Sure.
you get repaired.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Jeff. Item number 2, lead line service inventory.
Yeah, this was really gonna be Justin's item, but I'll cover what I know, which is we all water systems owe a report to the state of California identifying any lead service line. So when I say service line, that's for our purposes, that's the line, not a district main line, but the line that feeds a individual customer, like a house or a business. And we owe that to the state by October. And so we have to do some manual inspections to confirm we don't have any. We don't suspect we have any lead service lines. I think there's only been a handful found in the whole state of California. And a lot of the community is exempt from these exams because they were built after lead pipe was no longer commercially available, or was prohibited in
When was
California.
that?
I believe sometime in the 80s. I can't remember the exact date.
So the houses that we had.
Yes.
Before 80s,
Yeah.
they don't have.
Well, we don't suspect we have any, but we're in the process now of inspecting those lines and preparing the report and.
You said by October, you go up to the state? Yeah.
Yeah, and every water system is in the process of doing this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so let's, 86, that's what I thought it was. Okay, so almost 40 years ago. So we have to inspect lines that are older than that. In Templeton's case, this was a community of, less than half of its current size back in the 80s. So there's a lot of the homes and businesses won't need to be physically checked because they were built after that date.
But this is like from the water meter to the house.
Yes, and we really can check it at the meter box. We don't have to check every inch of that
Oh.
line. So when we open the meter box, you can see the line coming to the meter and the line going to the house.
Okay.
It's technically from the main to the house, right? The full branch line, right?
Yeah, the whole service line.
Yeah.
But at the meter, we take care of the line from the main to the meter. That's a district responsibility. And in most cities, same kind of thing, to the meter. And then from the meter to the home, it's the homeowner's responsibility, but we still have to report this information. So even if we find a line past the meter that's lead,
Yeah.
it'll be reported to the state, even if it's not our line to change.
Also, once you
Some
report it,
point
then the homeowner would need to change.
Yeah, I don't
it.
know what the requirements are gonna be for changing it, if the homeowner has to change it. Again, we don't expect to find any.
Oh, and this is a requirement by state. I
Yeah,
hadn't heard of
this is all fallout from the Flint, Michigan water crisis about 5 or 6 years ago. A bunch of new laws came. Came down. You've been hearing lead's bad for us for
Yeah.
a long time. It's not new news. And lead was, if we were a community that had a lot of infrastructure that was, 100 years old, it would be maybe, or on the East Coast or something, it might be more concerning, but in California, they're not common to find lead pipes.
I've been doing construction 10 years and I haven't found a lead pipe, so. And I just remodeled the building, but I mean, they had already been swapped out. But hey, a lot of that.
Any questions? Okay, thank you again, Jeff. Item 3, the wait list application requirements.
All right, so this item came up because former board member Kalud Kirsten had made an inquiry of me really about our requirements for getting on the water wait list. I think everyone knows we have a wait list for water units. It's getting shorter each day, actually right now, for the last few months anyway. But nonetheless, there had been, prior to this February, there had been people on the wait list for 30 years, since the mid-90s. And now we're making our way through some of the older applicants. And this is the district's current waitlist application. It just requires owner information, the property address, and then the type of property, like zoning, and then the number of water and or sewer units that were requested. And on the wait list, if you look, there's a lot of very random numbers. There's a lot of properties that are looking for one water unit, and you could kind of look at that and say, hey, they wanted to build another house, or they wanted to, add a unit to their existing property or build on a vacant lot. Pretty simple. But there's a lot of other waitlist applicants, again, dating back from the beginning of time, that would ask for 50 or 20 or 5 or 10. And there didn't appear to be kind of a rhyme or reason. And for that reason, many of us, included in particular, although we're concerned that the waitlist didn't represent a very good forecast for future demand for water units. And I think history will show this as we go through this process, and It was likely that property owners didn't know what they wanted to build or weren't sure what they wanted to build when they got on the wait list. Again, 30 and 20 and 10 years ago, and maybe even last year, because we have some that are more recent on the wait list, weren't certain what they wanted to build. And then additionally, the rules change about what you can build over time. In other words, 30 years ago, the zoning restrictions or the zoning allowances for, like, let's say residential density were far lower than they are now. You can build much more dense housing today than you could have 30 years ago. So it's sort of a kind of, maybe it's sort of a catch-22. One, I think it was intimidating to some people to see the number of units requested on the wait list. And if you were at the bottom of the wait list or wanted to get on the wait list now, you might say, hey, but I'm behind 1,500 water units. Is it ever gonna get to me? And I would explain to, we would explain to applicants on the wait list that we really don't know if people will take those units or how many they'll take. And actually, as it turns out, as we're going through this process right now, most parties we're offering water units to are not taking any units. And those that are taking a smaller amount than they had originally requested for a whole bunch of reasons. One, lots of things have changed over the decades. For residential properties, the option of building an ADU without having to obtain a water unit off the wait list exists. That wasn't even a thing, 10 or 20 years ago, et cetera. So it's difficult. It's always been difficult to look at the wait list and determine how many units were actually going to be needed. So one of the things that former board member Pearson requested was to have an applicant provide some sort of evidence that their waitlist request could be utilized. So I was bringing this item before the committee to kind of talk about the pros and cons or what we require, which is really nothing. I mean, we require proof that you own the property and your waitlist number. And I think I read our code. I think we could ask for more information on the waitlist application. I think it might be difficult to try to assess whether or not the number of units that somebody was requesting could be sort of proved up. I mean, the circumstance. Additionally, if you think about it now, if somebody is on the wait list today and they may have to wait 20 years, I don't think that'll happen. But history has shown that people had to wait a long time. It would be difficult to know what the rules might be at the time you do the development. So I don't know. I personally don't think it would be worth trying to enforce some sort of criteria, or if there is criteria, it shouldn't be too tight, because I'm afraid that if somebody got on the wait list today, maybe their property is zoned for 1 acre lot, and over time that changes. And if we restrict it to meet current zoning, and by the time they get served, they wouldn't have enough units to build what might be new zoning, for example. So I mean, that's one of the pitfalls of restricting it. But if you had more criteria, if you had more.
There's also the argument that they might not be asking for enough.
Sure. Yeah,
I had the conversation with somebody where I believe that's the case. They didn't ask for enough, and now they're coming up and they'll get they requested 5, but I think the parcel could probably support more. And they'll be disappointed because they didn't double check. They were requesting enough at the time either. So there's kind of both arguments. Like, are they asking too much or are they not asking?
Yeah, I don't.
And there needs to be maybe an analysis to understand what is possible on the.
Well, and again, right now, we're not, to get on the wait list is a one-time fee of $350. We're not doing much work verifying they own it, putting them on the wait list. There isn't much service being provided with that process. If we were to try to analyze or, have to get some sort of evidence from the property owner that they've hired a planner that does some analysis that shows this property can support X, Y, Z, there'd be more involved, more costs for the property owner, depending on what kind of evidence they had to put together, more costs for us or fees to them to support any of that work. So it's I think it's really is something that could be considered by the board. I think at this point I was trying to see if the committee had any interest in, or what might be the committee's concerns. I think even if you had that evidence. In other words, let's say let's say we said, provide evidence that shows that your proposed project, you could utilize all this water that you're requesting. Even if they could show that, that doesn't mean they're gonna accept those units when they're offered them. There's lots of parcels that could be developed in a more dense fashion or more higher water use fashion than they are.
Yeah. Can you define the calculation for a unit?
Yes,
That's not a calculation I'm familiar with.
575 gallons per day.
And what's the typical gallon per day for a standard, 1,200 square foot home? Is there like a?
You know what, that's something that we're gonna tackle with with our water master plan update.
Sure.
It's
But-
supposed to be like the equivalent of a single family home.
So one unit
But-
would basically be a single
Yeah.
family home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
That's
you're
the
like,
thing that they
and for you guys, when you're allocating units, you're like, okay, someone's getting 5 units, that's gonna require a 2-inch meter or a 1-inch, well, 2-inch will serve a lot, but 1-inch meter, or is it pretty standard like we?
Well, they kind of end up telling us that with their, it has fire requirements.
Suppression, yeah,
fire
yeah.
suppression
Would you meter
requirements.
suppressor? Cause typically fire suppression, when I've done it, like I just did a tie-in for Grover Heights Elementary School, the fire suppression goes on the main, not metered. And I've done it 3 times now.
Yeah,
But you
mostly
still need
we
the
do.
units for that?
No, the fire suppression is not part of their water use calculations. But for new construction residential, they at least have to have typically a 1-inch meter.
Yeah.
To run the fire, to run residential fire sprinklers.
Yeah, and just a couple more, of
Residential is harder to,
course.
nail down. They have to give us their calculations,
Yeah.
but when you're talking about residential, it's like each unit has to have one.
Yeah, and
Why?
what is, so you have this wait list, people are not taking their units, there's been a long time wait list. I have a coworker and my neighbor who's here who bought the lot next to him and he wants to put a meter, I don't know if he's on the wait list or not. So I guess my question is, what is the timeline and what is the wait list for, right? Like, is it because you guys simply can't install enough meters, you're just trying to build them slowly while you build your water supply? Like, what is the challenge and why is this? Cause there's some places I can go get a water meter.
Yeah, pretty much everywhere you should be able to connect, not in Templeton, but most places, when you're ready to build, you pay a fee and you have the water installed and.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here, the case here, many years ago, 4 decades ago, the district found that it had essentially oversubscribed its water supply. And so we've been kind of playing catch up since. And so for many years, decades, we've had this water wait list. And so what that means is if you have a piece of property that does not have a water unit already assigned to it and you want to build a home, you get on the wait list or you're already on it. Many properties already are. We've got a couple 150 or something that are on the wait list. And we have many properties vacant that have water units assigned to them as well. And then you wait until we can serve you. And basically it's because the district established about 8 years ago, a buffer policy and model. And water units are only released if we can show that we can meet our 20% buffer requirements. So water units are released when new supplies become available, or when forecasted demand drops over, we average the demand is based on a 10-year kind of running figure for current development. And so over the last many years, actually demand has gone down.
Mhm.
And so if our forecast shows that demand is low enough, then additional units are made available. And so the board reviews that model each year and makes a determination about releasing units, and we've released units the last 4 years.
And how many units did you release the last 4 years?
About 200 this
Uh,
year.
A year.
No, the last 4 years. Yeah, this year we released 120.
So, and you mentioned that there was someone who was requesting 50 units on an application. What would that be? Why would someone need
I have
50?
no idea.
So that being
It doesn't
said,
say, right? This is the application. I know what property it is. I know where the parcel is because it's got an APN.
yeah,
But we wouldn't have any objective or subjective review of what they're proposing to build.
and I think that based on what's going on in the state of California, especially with the housing issues, that and I don't know what the ability Templeton's staff has to spend more time on this. I know that that would be quite the undertaking to get more data and then create some sort of priority hierarchy based on that data. I think if you could do that, it would be good to do that based on the fact that we are in a major housing crisis and the state of
So,
California.
this discussion, I'm not, I want to.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
The district's code establishes that hierarchy. So
Okay.
that's not really what, the hierarchy is in order of application on the
It's just
list.
first come, first served.
Yeah, with exceptions. There are carve outs for public projects. There's carve outs for low income housing. There's carve outs for failing wells. If you're on a domestic well, that's your only source of water and it fails. You know, there's carve outs for those circumstances.
Sure.
But if you in general own a vacant piece of property, you have no water on it, your best bet's to get in line at some point and then wait until you're served. And what we found is that many people who are in line got in line 25, 30 years ago. And when the water became available, they no longer needed it or wanted much less than was originally requested. And then maybe there's circumstances where somebody, like that Lori mentioned, maybe there's somebody who said, maybe a prior property owner put them on the wait list for 5 and now they want to develop 7 parcels or 7 housing units or whatever. But they can't, once they're on the wait list, they can't modify their request. They could add another waitlist request to the same parcel. And we do have several of those, I think that are on for the same parcel 2 or 3 times.
Mhm.
So that's how they could add to their water inventory. So, that's established, and by the district's code. But what isn't in detail is what should the district ask for? This is the waitlist application we've been using, and as you can see, it doesn't ask for a lot of information. And I think to some people that led to a concern that, well, how do we know if they're gonna be able to use all the water they're requesting? And my answer to date has been, well, we'll know when we offer them water and they decide what they wanna take. And so many people might be on there, for example, right now, we have one parcel, that we have an offer that's been extended to this property owner. The request is for 50 units. It's a big round number. Seems unlikely that was a specially planned out project, 25 years ago, but who knows? And they're on the clock. And when you're offered the unit, you have 10 days to determine if you'll take it, and then a total of 30 days to enter into a payment plan for the water units. And so, we'll know in that case, I think Thursday, whether they're gonna take any units.
Well, that is a complicated situation.
It is.
So the thing is here today, do you wanna add more data to the application itself? But if it's first come, first serve, what is that data achieving? Cause if someone asks for 50 and you have to give them 50 if they ask for it, right?
Well, no,
They have
no.
to prove they're gonna use
Yeah,
it.
so it's even, and again, it's a little more complicated than that. They can accept, if we have 50 available, we offer them the full amount they've asked for. They can accept any amount up to the 50 that was originally requested. And then, so let's say they don't have it, they don't know exactly what they're gonna do, but they think it might be, maybe it's an apartment building, maybe it's gonna be 40 years, 48 units or something. And so they accept the 50. They enter into an agreement with the district whereby the agreement has terms. They have to go through a process, like a permitting process. And I'll say that the units are assigned to their parcel, but they're not like set in stone yet because they don't have an application, or they don't have an approved project.
Yeah,
So if they go through the county process, at that point, we're kind of out of it, right? We are the utility provider. We do review their calculations and ensure we can meet whatever they're gonna build, but the county is the one that's leading the planning approval effort, the entitlements for that project.
sure.
So if, as a part of that process, over the next 4 years, it ends up being a 36 unit apartment building that gets approved, then they would essentially refund the other 14 units back to the district, and we would continue to allocate those down the wait list.
Yeah,
So
well,
they're not locked in
yeah,
to those.
The thing that does start when they accept the units is that they have to do something with the units according to our code. And so that's the pressure, like you have to pay for these units and do something with the property in 180 days. And so that's really where they have to decide, am I gonna take all of these units?
yeah.
Because they're not inexpensive.
Well-
So there is that pressure to go to the counties, get a project together.
Yeah, they gotta move on it.
Decide what is like the most that I'm really gonna take here, but that activity could happen when they're requesting in the law to say, what's the maximum?
Right,
that
it
I
could,
do on-"
It could, but
And then they.
rules change,
Yeah,
I think the
that's-
problem as somebody who I wanna, obviously look out for the district users, but also for like a property owner. We don't know what if the wait takes a decade or two, you don't know what the rules might be at the time you go to develop a property, so. You could base it on today's zoning. For example, if we modified our waitlist application and said, for housing projects, you can request no more units than the zoning permits. And that might be a very logical place to start.
Yeah.
And let's say the zoning was 10 units an acre today. And so because of that, a new property owner got on the wait list. He got a 2-acre property, zoned 10 units an acre, and put on the wait list for 20 units. Then, time goes by and the zoning changes. And all of a sudden the county says, well, now it's 15 units an acre because we've increased density allotment. Then when we go to serve them, I would think that the property owner might come back and say, you limited what I would have requested more because I wanted more options, but you limited me to this and now this is all I can do.
Yeah, but it is a double-edged sword because I could have a 1 acre property and ask for 50 units. There's nothing stopping me from doing that. And, but that doesn't mean, and obviously.
Ultimately, they have to pay for it.
Well,
right? Take care of it.
sure, and they only have 180 days to do it. And like you said, density's changed a lot. Like I know Paso just changed the zoning code. So I'm with you because you're not gonna go into design and go through the permitting process until you have the water already allocated. But maybe you go through the permit process, you thought you were gonna stuff 50 in with setbacks and rules changes, now you can only get 36 in, or the vice versa, you're too little, so, I mean, it wouldn't be bad information, but I also see how it would be maybe beneficial to only allow them to request as much as the rules allow at the time of the application, but then down 20, if it was 2 years or 5 years, then set it, but 20 something years,
Well,
like.
Actually, I believe that hopefully within the 5 years, this problem is gonna go.
No,
away.
I think we feel better about that now than we did
Project That's
before.
gonna bring on like about another 600 water units, and every year, it seems like we're able to release more water, so. I think the only thing on this data, it would be nice to know what our projected demand is, if it could be accurate, but as you mentioned, it's gonna be a challenge to figure that out, so. But my main concern is making sure that we're charging enough for the processing fee, so I don't know, I know it's like, it's just per application, it's not per unit, but it seems like that the processing fee is just a matter of filling out the application, there isn't much you're doing, so.
Right, but we're not doing,
We
right,
could-
right now, we're not
the only-
We could decide to send a letter electronically to the applicant to tell them
confirm their
application has been
Yeah, so you
received,
can,
you're now on the
so-
list. You
so
can
you
look
can't really-
at the list on, the website.
yeah, so you
So you
can't
can
really
see where
charge
you are.
per unit then.
No, this fee is intended to recover staff's time of.
Yeah.
Getting them, there's really no services being provided, there is a review, right, okay, do they have, is their application supported, is the property owner sign this and do they have evidence of the other property? So that,
You know,
that's
I mean-
double checked,
I mean, it would be nice to know, I guess, as I said, I know if we could come up with a project that produces 600 units or 700 units, that's it, we'll be done, we satisfy all the needs, but yeah, it's gonna be a challenge.
yeah, and then keep in mind, any changes you make would only be prospectively, right? The waitlist is what it is today.
Yeah,
So we're only talking about things going forward, let me bring something up to you, because I think this worth looking, I wanna show you the wait list because it's kind of,
Unless you went back and said, you're still on the wait list, you're not losing your spot, but we want you to fill out more data, but now you're gonna have to go through and take that data and put it somewhere, and then so you have a wait list of 1,500 units, give or take right now?
Yeah, here it is right here. So here's what's interesting, is this, by the way, we've knocked out how many parcels in the last couple months?
With only 100
40?
units.
Units or parcels?
Parcels, about 30 or something, maybe? Yeah, I mean, we've a number, because, yeah, and like,
With only 100, we only released 100 30 units of water, and we managed to go through
Well, we're
that.
still going through them. This is gonna keep going.
Yeah.
So this party right here that's waiting for 50, they're on the clock right now. So it's kind of like draft day for the.
Yeah,
AMA. They're
because
on the
if they
clock.
only take 10, then people are
Well,
gonna
and
get.
I just, for example, looked at this property and it's not zoned for even close, to use 50 currently. But we just went through a process and the property, they're calling the Maitri property, it's just on North Main.
Yeah.
That they went through a zoning change with the county and now they're going to have significantly more units allowed. So there's always that possibility too.
That hasn't gone through them.
It was approved by the board last
oh,
week,
oh,
or
really?
last week of June. I believe.
So they could pay for the 50, pay for it for 180 days, and then at the end of 180 days, if they, what's the metric for determining if they're gonna use them
They
or not?
actually have to go have an application of some sort with the county. whether it be
Any
a map-
application.
Map or a development
Like
application,
a CUP or a MUP.
And these
CUP.
units aren't cheap either, they're like $45,000.
Yeah.
Per unit?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay,
So
so.
they have
So
to.
you
put
gotta
down-
consider
They get their
No one wants to-
45 grand back if they don't use
Yes.
the unit?
Yeah, so if they wanna relinquish the unit at a future time, if they have this big pot of money, they
They
can,
get all the money back.
they can do that. But I think, most savvy developers would have an understanding what they can do right now. And if
Yeah.
they need to go through a planning process with the county, that'll add like a good year.
It's,
So-
yeah, working with the county's really slow and cumbersome. So what I wanted to show you though is this is the wait list, and you can see like we've knocked out from 1995 to 2002 so far just this year because of this release. But if you look back in this year, here's 2002 and 3, you can see each of these years, like 2003, they were like 10, 2004, they were like 10. But if you go to the bottom of the wait list, and this is, I think, more predictive of things going forward, we go to the bottom of the wait list here.
Skips a lot of years.
Yeah, so
3 years.
see, 2 or 3 per year, or sometimes
Some-
none.
None for 3 years.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, 20, okay, yeah, none, 18 and 19, we had none, what? 3 in 2020, 2 in 21, 2 in 22, 1 in 23, so there are not a lot of additional parcels being added to
Those
those.
are just.
And it's the 30s and 50s that are really like slowing it up. If you didn't have so many of those, you could knock out the whole list pretty quick.
You know, what I'm saying is, we don't know if it's slowing it up. You don't know
Because they-
until the rubber meets the road, right? Like, you don't know until it's time, until you're put on the clock and have to make a decision. And so when people ask me, am I gonna get an offer? I'll say I don't know, but look at this number here, 150. Very unlikely that 150 was for a specific project in mind. It's more like a big round number. So.
They were trying to hedge a bet and say, hey, maybe Templeton will be really developed in 20 years, and so we'll throw our thing.
And that decision was made in, 17 years.
I think, we have a lot of other items on this
Sure.
agenda. We're only here to talk about, if we wanna add something to the application.
Yeah.
Everything else is probably gonna have to come back if you wanna make changes to our code and all
Yeah,
of that.
yeah, and
So I am in favor really of right now of not keeping it the way it is.
Yeah, there isn't anything, I don't see anything we could do to.
Yeah, I don't think it's not gonna help anything that's already there anyways.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to just bring this forward, and that way if someone were to question, say, yeah, we did bring the item to
We'll
the.
do call ahead and talk to me or Beth. And we can just have that conversation, like, just, when you're thinking about how many units. Kind of
Maybe some-
analyze what's possible, and don't.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody were to come in and on a waiting parcel, and say, I need 100 units, I'd say, this doesn't seem reasonable, what are you gonna do with them? What are you gonna build here? It's just cause when push comes to shove, you're gonna have to, it doesn't mean you're gonna take more than you need.
And I agree with both of you guys that like adding data to this at this time doesn't, now, if you got it down where you were doing them every year and allocating them every year, then it might be good to get a description.
Yeah.
Until you get there.
Actually, what'll end up happening at the end of the day, if there is no wait list,
Yeah.
they wouldn't
Come
need
up.
to, they would just,
Yeah.
they wouldn't get the
Yeah.
project,
So,
they wouldn't come and pull the trigger until they knew exactly what they needed.
And I
Yeah.
think, we'll be there in about 5 years.
yeah, I just
Okay.
wanted to understand the process, so thanks for.
So the committee, I guess, has said, keep it the way it
Yeah,
is.
sounds
Yeah.
A lot of folks do look at the lists and they're intimidated by, so we can explain.
Yeah, well, now that I can
Not
explain
likely
it,
everybody's gonna take 150 to 100 then.
Yeah, and now that I understand it well, like I said, with my neighbor and my coworker and what he's probably on the wait list for it and.
Yeah, it's online, just so you have
Yeah.
it, it's under the engineering department, water wait list if you wanna take a look. And it could be, oftentimes what we find is there was a prior property owner that got on the wait list, so it may not be under their name, so you have to put the name in. Because it's the parcel, not the person that's on the wait list.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is a virtual meter agreement.
All right, so this item came up because one of our previous committee members requested that the committee discuss options to move on from certain folks that aren't using their water. And like, in other words, can we buy, if somebody has a water unit assigned to them, but they're not doing anything, what can we do about it to to essentially either take it away or serve somebody else? And so I'm phrasing this under the virtual meter because at least the board members know, the district has made some changes over the past decade with regard to the water code. And up until 2014, these units were assigned to parcels and they could just, the code didn't allow it, but the district's practice allowed them to essentially just stay that way. And so, for a variety of reasons, we found that there was quite a bit of cost that the rest of the community was paying in order to maintain a robust system, able to allow those persons to connect at their convenience. And so we instituted some deadlines, basically gave all property owners that had a water unit assigned to the property 4 years to connect. And then what most, let's say in round numbers, there were like 800 of those at the time, 800 units that were outstanding at the time. What we found is that while some projects did move forward in the 4-year period, most people did not actually develop their parcel. And so the district came up with another way of allowing them to connect and pay. They could either assign, they could actually put in the water service, although not use any water, and then sign up for a water account, pay the base rate. It's currently about $30 a month. Or we developed this program called a virtual meter agreement. And the vast majority of those outstanding units opted to go this route and connect virtually. So what right now is about 500 rough numbers, I didn't do a count, have 500 units are associated with virtual meter agreements, which means they're not using the water, but they are paying the base rate for the water as if they had water service. And the reason I wanted to show the virtual meter agreement, is because this is for those, these are all dated, most all of these are from the end of 2018, so about 5.5 years ago. So this is the district's current, if you will, contract with those property owners through this virtual meter agreement. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of this is the tool that we had in place and so forth and so on. The district essentially said, we're gonna bill you, we're gonna show your account like it's real, like you have one, and you're gonna get a monthly bill. And in order to preserve that water, you've got to stay in good standing. And if you fail to stay in good standing, what ends up happening is the protections provided under the virtual meter agreement go away. So if you don't pay the bill, then your virtual meter agreement lapses. And if that were to occur, then that property wouldn't lose that water, but it would become subject to a water capacity fee. And that fee is defined as the difference between the current connection fee, roughly 45,000, and whatever they paid at the time. Sometimes as low as $2,400. It's because it would have been decades ago. So people who have these virtual meter agreements, don't let them lapse, because it's providing quite a bit of protection for a future connection. They wouldn't have to pay that. So the reason I bring this up is I wanted the committee members at least to know that we've kind of made an agreement with these property owners that says, hey, as long as you pay your base rate, like you are connected, you can connect without an additional fee or penalty when you ultimately do connect. So, and again, when we talk about outstanding units, the bulk of them are associated with these kinds of agreements. The more recently released units don't have these yet because they're part of the payment plan, which has its own set of criteria, the pursuant development criteria.
But aren't there about 100 or so water units where they didn't sign up for virtual meter agreement?
I can give you that number.
Up to 1 million.
Yeah,
So when you buy a unit, just to fill you in, you can pay full and have that unit, you know, completely paid for, or you can pay it over 5 installments.
Okay,
Interesting.
And if you're going through a county process and you're telling us that you're continuing with that, then we allow that to go almost through over 5 years.
so someone has a,
Folks could take almost 5 years to pay.
sure, someone has a virtual meter agreement. They don't pay for 60 days and they only paid 10 grand. They now owe you $35,000 to continue to use that?
when they go to connect the water,
Oh,
not, they don't know it immediately. It's only if they ever do connect.
yeah.
I'm pulling this up.
Sometimes these are businesses that already have.
Yes, some people have come in.
meters, and so they want the option.
Yeah, they just,
On a
and they're
property,
getting
and
one bill.
sometimes It's a blank, there's no action.
So,
It's kind of confusing sometimes, because you're like, they have meters, is it virtual?
so the initial discussion behind this item was based on a former board member wanted to review what, like, what is it that they
Yeah,
wanted to change?
well-
and what is it that we're discussing here regarding this document? Cause you don't really use this document anymore, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, we have a number of them in place. Let me ask the first question, before we move on to that next one. The question was, how many units are subject to the water capacity fee? And there, I have 17 plus 6, 23 plus 17, so 40. 40 units are subject to water capacity.
40,
Right.
So that means 40 people lap.
Not necessarily 40, no, none of them, no one's lapsed. These are people who didn't opt into this program, back when it was available. So, and for various reasons, some might have just missed the deadline. That was rare. We had a lot of communication with these properties at the time. Some of these folks are people who have water units assigned to their property that is very unlikely to be able to be used on their property. It's like a fully developed site. And they've not found that relinquishing them was attractive enough to do so, so they've just held on to them just in case they could ever do something else with them. And yeah, I think we did have one party stop paying on the virtual meter agreement for likely the same reason, like, hey, I don't wanna pay this every month, the likelihood of using them is really low, and so I'm just gonna let them become subject to a water capacity fee. So yeah, we have 40 units that are out there that are like that in various,
Yeah,
So they
kind of
would
various
have to pay the difference if they did want to connect.
if they didn't want to use it, but they're holding on to it. As a result, we are keeping like the
Allocated
liability out.
units
So
that
we're
are-
not, we could turn around and use those 40 units towards our wait list. So which could now, as we know, could go pretty far. So yeah, so as far as the virtual agreement was, to me, we got the agreement. We can't go back on that.
No,
I was on the board, I think you were too, when we approved this.
yeah, no, this was all done very efficiently.
I like your second question, I don't quite understand who brought it back, one that's changed or why.
I was just trying to illustrate, nobody requested to change the virtual meter agreement. The request was, can we go back on these folks and free these water units up? And so I think the issue is, for the folks that have virtual meter agreements, I think it's gonna be very difficult to do so. There's risks.
yeah, you
We made a deal.
made a deal,
right.
you're in an agreement. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I get that you're like, if people are sitting on stuff, it would be nice for them to give those up. But you guys made it a deal. They thought that was a good deal. They agreed to that deal.
But the 40 units though don't really have an agreement.
They do not, well, yeah, they don't have an agreement. They're governed by the district's water code, which said back in 2014, when that change was made, that if you don't develop or connect by a certain deadline, then you're subject to this fee.
Yes.
It didn't take away the rights. It didn't take away what they would view or what would be argued an entitlement to water. That's a legal issue, and I'm not really prepared to talk about that, but we show various parcels having these units assigned, including those 40 that you talked. I mean, each one of those 40 has an APN associated with it.
Yeah.
But can we just go back to them and talk with them? and
That's
see
what I
if
was
they're
gonna
really-
recommend.
I mean, are they gonna use it or not?
So, yeah, we could, we've
It
done,
sounds like
we've
it's
made
like-
over time, changes to the relinquishment program to hopefully get some parties to voluntarily relinquish. We could re-communicate that opportunity to
What
those
if-
folks.
What if we just talk with them and just see what they wanna do or what's going on with these situations and then come back and then you could explain to us, say, this is the
I
situation.
mean, like survey them?
Yeah, so, and then, hey, it doesn't look like they're gonna build for another 20 years, or they're never gonna build. And then even if they don't relinquish those units, at least we know, hey, maybe we could offer them to the wait list because those units aren't gonna get used. So like we basically
Yeah,
oversell.
I think, yeah, to a certain extent, it's possible that, let me give you an example, because the circumstances are gonna be different for everyone. But, for example, Woody Woodruff Construction had more units on his, what he called the James Street condo project, just, the yellow buildings that are kind of,
Yeah.
just east of Main Street over there, they were built like 7 or 8 years ago. And at the time, we invited him to relinquish those units. He had 2 extra, and he said, no, I'm just gonna put him on this, I'm gonna assign him to this common lot. And just maybe someday you'll allow me to do something different with him, or I'll buy a piece of property that's adjoining it to be able to do a lot line adjustment and move those units, because as you know, our code is pretty restrictive. The units are generally not transferable. However, there's been, over time, several efforts of property owners who have these excess units to want to make them more transferable because it would benefit them. It's interesting though, I think there would have been, 5 years ago, when we went years without releasing water units. The interest in being creative, was high. And as over the last 4 years since we've been releasing units, right now, I don't know when we're gonna finish our release. It may take another year just to do the current release, or at least 6 more months. We're making a ton of progress on the wait list, even with a relatively small number of units, 129 this year. And the relinquishment program hasn't generated tons, but I think we've dealt with 3 property owners since we incentivized that program that have relinquished units to the wait list. So it's jiggled it up a little bit. And property owners, we could, in this communication or survey or whatever you're speaking about, we could, because one of the things we did try to do is when we offered the relinquishment program, we asked them to contact us and let us know what their plans were, and they don't want to share that information. They don't have, right, there's no obligation for them to tell us what's going on. And so none of them took advantage of that opportunity, but we could make another effort to again, contact these. There aren't 40, there are 40 units, but not 40
Yeah,
properties.
there's only 2 or 3.
Well,
And they don't have
20 or
to
something.
They don't have to respond.
So, I mean, I think it's kind of.
I think for now, we're probably not gonna make any adjustments to anything. I think the rules are the rules, but I would say there's 2 surveys that I would recommend you do. I'd say survey A is talk to these people, because they're gonna have to pay a pretty penny to get those if they decide to do it. Maybe you get a few that way. And reach out to everybody on the current list, because you said a lot of people aren't taking them.
We do, that's exactly what we've done. As we've gone through the list, we have 2 sets of communication with the wait list. One, like an advance notice that the district's releasing water units. There's gonna be some pretty strict deadlines, so watch for the actual release to come out. And oh, by the way, if you wanna adjust, reduce the number of units you requested or remove yourself from the wait list, please let us know and we'll kind of clean that up. Very few people take advantage of that. Most people just don't respond.
Well, because they
There's
might
no
not have
contact.
the right people, so I think it might be worth the
No,
effort.
it's not, they are the right people.
I check on the.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
well, because I know it changes and all this stuff, maybe, and I don't know what your staffing's like and how much effort it'd be, but it might be worth the effort at one point in time, hold the town hall or whatever, or call every one of them up, right, one by one, but that's a lot of work, and I understand that. But for today's conversation, I think, from my end, there's nothing you can really do.
Not on the virtual.
I mean.
You don't wanna take them away from people.
Well, I mean, there's just risks. Any action you would take that would that a property would view as a removal of, I don't wanna call it a right, but they're gonna view it as a right to that water, and we track it to that parcel. It's gonna come with a certain level of risk. So if there was an effort to force them out or do something different, Anything that was non-voluntary, there's a fair amount of risk.
Yeah,
No,
I
I would,
you,
yeah,
you,
yeah, I would not do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend.
and it's gonna get better, so it's really,
Just like reminding them they
Yeah.
have options.
Yeah, I think reminding them of the relinquishment is again, because it's been a year maybe or more since we've done that. We're not talking about a great number of
No,
folks here.
no.
We can certainly do that and maybe even ask again, hey, what are your plans? I think ultimately though, as the district's wait list gets reduced,
That's,
they're
yeah,
gonna say that, look, this is just, it's not really doing me any good, holding on to it is.
especially once, yeah,
yeah, no, and as it gets better, I'm with you.
we just need to be patient.
Yeah,
Just a couple of more, I mean, this is so
What's the
different.
project
compared
that's
to 10
gonna
years ago.
basically take care of everything in 5 years? There's a project.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's called Creekside Ranch Project, and I guess Jeff maybe.
Yeah,
may
well,
inform
I know we got a lot to go through, so
Yeah,
I don't need to
so-
get too sidetracked, so.
We're a member of the Nacimiento Water Project and that, right now we accept water at the Selby site, which is where we deposit our treated wastewater. And because of that, the site is limited to how much Nacimiento water we can take, because we have to put all of our wastewater there.
Okay.
So we cannot utilize our full subscription, I'll use the term subscription, our full participant level of Nacimiento water. And so the project that was mentioned would relocate the place where we accept that water to the Creekside site and allow us to accept and utilize all of it. So it would increase our, by about 300 acre feet, how much Nacimiento water we can take out
Cool.
of here. It's a lot.
Yeah, which is like 600 watts.
Yeah, no, I know acre feet. Yeah. It's, I know most people don't know the calc, but.
Okay. Item 5, review consulting services, policy and practices.
Yeah, Lori can take the lead on this item. And I'll pull up this, little. cheat
Yeah, we
sheet.
have a table here. I don't know if you've had a chance to peek at this, but I did a quick review of all the surrounding municipalities and what we call our purchasing policy here, call it procurement policy. And specifically professional services or consulting services aspect of Templeton's is quite restrictive, particularly just because of costs of labor and hourly rates for consultants have gone up. This policy was put in place in 2022. And so if you look at the top one there, anything between 0 and 2,000 or 24,999 is we department heads can basically go ahead and choose that professional. Anything above that requires what's called an RFQ or an RFP, which requires, a lot of staff time and a lot of time on consultants' sides to respond to. So, in the district, we deal with some specialty services, like, for example, the well, folks that we work with, very specialized in our well, hydrologists in particular, GSI, we have a 40-year history with. And so when we're wanting them to do some services like, testing, or we're looking at a new well at the Platte site, for example, that number of 24,999 has been really constraining. So we've been having to ask them to break things down into like piecemeal for us to stay below that. And to go out for an RFQ for those particular services would be difficult for the district, because then we'd end up having to choose a hydrologist that doesn't have the history in the area. We have the staff.
We may have to
Yeah.
choose them. We
Yeah.
expect it also might not be it might be disingenuous to the consultants. If we could begin, because we have this really long-term relationship and there's a lot of value in maintaining that with GSI. That's Paul Sorensen was with Fugro merged with GSI. Paul's since retired, but they have all of our records and this long history. And so one of the things that would be, if you go through an RFP process and we request proposals from various, using this hydrogeology standard, that's gonna take us weeks or months to put the RFP together, and then it has to circulate for a period of time, weeks. And then we have to judge them. And then it could be that you're asking other firms to submit proposals when you really only want to use GSI anyway. Because they are Form 700 filer for us. They are our hydrogeologists, just like our district legal counsel. That's a very important, not a temporary assignment for them. So that was a great
Right.
example where, might go through a big, long process and not be helping the cause. And actually paying more, because if these firms all have to prepare proposals, formal proposals, there's a cost to that, and it
Usually pass on the cost.
yeah, it affects the bottom line.
So we just decided to look at what our neighbors do to try to get an idea, if we were to change that policy, what would be something that would be acceptable? So the city of Atascadero has a limit of approval by department head of 30,000. And between 30,000 and 100,000, their city manager can award with 3 informal quotes, with the option to bypass an emergency. And then 100,000 plus is the city council award or board award, with an RFP and an RFQ. City of Paso, they go even higher for they call it executive manager. Anything less than 40,000 can be approved. Between 40 and 150, they can do informal quotes, but they have a caveat that anything above 100,000 has to be board approved. Yeah, 150 plus, it requires the RFQ process. So that theirs is a little more complex, but and they do have a provision for what's called sole source vendors with written explanation. So that's probably somebody like our GSI, where it's like there's nobody else that's gonna do this, or it's a proprietary company that they only provide it, for example. So Napomo CSD, we actually modeled our purchasing policy after Napomo CSD, so it's pretty much the same. And then Los Osos CSD, they don't require an RFP until 50,000 plus. So if you just scroll down there, Carrie, so our preliminary option suggestion would be that we keep it the same department head approval for 0 to 24, but for between 25 and 100K, we allow a general manager award with 3 informal quotes, with the caveat that this particular project has already been approved by the budget. So for example, the plat swell replacement or any creekside work towards that end that we're trying to not some turnout and all that stuff like that, which has been, on budgets for years. So hopefully raising that number so that we can move along in those projects and not have to ask these folks to go out to RFP when we've been already talking to people for years on.
There's two issues here. The most significant one as far as timing is concerned is when does a consulting service need to be hired based on a request for a formal, I'll say just a request for proposals. An RFP can be a pretty it could take us quite a bit of time and effort to generate one. It's very specific, posted, so forth and so on. So that is really probably a hurdle to getting work done, not being able to call up 3 or 4 vendors and say, give me your cost for this is what we want to do, give me an informal quote or a proposal for that, but rather developing this very rigid formal RFP. What we found, what I kind of found specifically over this past year was we wanted to try to move forward some of the projects, and I couldn't get even the engineering firms to help us with generating the RFP, because if a firm helps an agency generate the RFP, the request for proposals, they cannot bid on the work. And so the local companies wanted the opportunity to bid on the actual engineering, didn't want to do the administrative side of things.
Yeah. No, I think that I'm very familiar with RFP processes because that's pretty much all I ever deal with. And and I understand it. I think what you guys have here is a good idea. I think it makes sense. There's some things that I know, 3 informal quotes, but there's no language in there that says you have to select the best value quote or the best value technically acceptable, right? Like, what's the pre-qualifications with those quotes? And you guys might have language in your code.
Yeah, this is just like a snapshot.
Yeah, that does that, and I just wanna,
Yeah,
those are things that are important, right, because like, not that people don't make good decisions, but you wanna make sure that you're getting the best bang for the buck for taxpayers' monies. I do think that once in a while with companies like GSI, keeping them honest is important, and I don't know, I'm not saying that they're not honest, I'm not saying anything bad about them, but I know when I have seen situations where contractors or whoever it is had these 20-year relationships that they're towards the end of these relationships, which not always end, but sometimes end, they end up not being honest with how much money they're charging for services because they know that they're the only show in town. So every once in a while, an RFP process is good for them, right? So, but again, if anything over $100,000, but like you said, you just have them break it down to 30 things, you stay under the thing and it doesn't really make a difference anyway. So, and this is not saying that you need to change anything. I think that the model of what you're doing here absolutely makes sense. I'm all for limiting red tape and allowing people to make decisions. I think the way you've modeled it is good, but I also think just food for thought. Once in a while, making people go through the process and put the effort in an RFP process or whatever it is, does make sense just to keep people making sure that they're providing the value, and I'm sure they are, like, again, this is not specific to one person, and they have the history, but after 40 years, sometimes you're like, new people get in over there and they're like, hey, we can just charge an extra 30% and they're not gonna, whatever. So every once in a while, it's good, but right here, if it's over 25 grand, you gotta go get 2 other bids even for that service anyway. So, and to be fair, you go get 3 bids, eventually you're not gonna get 3 bids if you only give it to one person every time. Right, we have that issue too. I get bids 30 times. So for that particular thing, they give you a bid for $30,000. The other ones are $30,000 and you just keep selecting them. What happens when, and I'm sure there's language, but eventually you won't get 3 bids. And I'm sure there's language that if you don't get 3 bids, you can still select people. Again, I think what you did is fine. I'd be in support of that. I don't know what you would really do. It's kind of the model everyone's adopted over the years, right? But I think that there's just, and I'd have to read all the caveats to your rules on what that really looks like, but from my position, I think it makes sense for what you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, I would say 10 years ago, I'd have thrown this in the waste basket. Okay, but prices have gone that way and not that way. I would even recommend that we raise it to 0 to 40,000. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do with 25,000 anymore. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. So, I mean, and I'm the auditor of the group. And, I've asked more than once why you didn't go out for an RFP in a board meeting. So, but I think under today's cost,
We still will see some RFPs coming through for these large projects. It's not beyond a doubt. We're still gonna be seeing them,
yeah.
but.
So again, I
Kind of giving them a little bit more to work with.
yeah, I would say that 0 to 40,000 to me would be fine, and 40 to 125,000. And then anything over 125,000, I would be comfortable with, but that's me.
Yeah, I think, you being the auditor and me not knowing exactly what you guys are paying for and how often you're paying for it, it would be hard for me to speak to the specific dollar amounts. I think that him being the guy that does review that, I think if he feels comfortable with those dollar amounts, that makes sense. I am a fan of getting quotes for people to keep people honest. I think that's good, cause.
I agree with that,
Yeah,
but again,
but from an auditing perspective.
they've tried to go out before, I mean, like they just said, for $25,000. Nobody's gonna bid on it because it's not worth their time.
So I'd be in favor of that.
Yeah, so anyway, that's,
Again, these items, just keep in mind, these are for projects that,
yeah,
in general, you already all know about and approve. You've
Right.
already given us the
Absolutely.
go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
To proceed with.
Yeah.
So we were just trying to pick and choose the right formula. And just know, if something requires an RFP, it's gonna take a lot longer to get it done.
Oh,
That's-
absolutely.
That's been and then we just found, we kind of shockingly just have noticed, you know, how much these, I mean, so right now, engineers, surveyors, and all of these services that we utilize, they're so overcommitted that they don't, the costs have just gone up a lot.
Yeah, for 25,000, honestly, you couldn't get me to walk through the door even if it's not $1 million project, I won't even give you a price for it. It's just not worth it for the company I work for, right? Like, it's not worth our effort.
Just
So-
to prepare it is gonna cost them 25,000.
Oh, yeah, if I gotta go through an RFP process on a
Okay.
$100,000 job,
And I'm being very conservative, I think, with what
But I do like that middle range because,
Yeah.
you know, it's good on those little bit bigger projects. And again, the dollar amount, you know, maybe you start on this range to start and then next year you bump it up, or you start where he said. I think it'd be good for your people you use a lot at $26,000 to give you some quotes just to go, hey, I've been working with you 40 years, 2 people just kicked your butt. What are you gonna do here? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just that, but you know, the dollar
And
amount.
again, all of this stuff comes through the budget anyway,
So
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway,
that's I'm
David, you're awful quiet here.
I mean, you know, things have gotten expensive, so yeah, 25,000 is not gonna go a long way, so, I mean, I would just, yeah, I was trying to read that, the 25,000 to 100,000, so, this would only apply to projects which have been approved, but if it's an emergency, then, I don't, so you still somehow with emergency, you're gonna come.
Yeah, we'd have to come to the board.
Yeah,
to
okay,
do
so, yeah,
we
so,
can
okay.
Dial in that language.
So I'm fine, the Atascadero was Atascadero 35,000?
They were 30.
30,
for a
okay, yeah,
department head
30,000, okay,
approval.
30,000,
Passo's 40.
yeah,
So
Paso
it
is
was 40, yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, I think that's the one that needs to be re-raised more so than the rest of them.
yeah, exactly.
So that's why I said
So
40.
I don't know, I mean, you guys think 30 is good or 40 or? What the
Uh,
rest on
you know,
you?
I don't know the
Justin
value
and I
of the
would,
project, so.
the higher the better to do it.
Okay.
Because when we're,
Alright.
when
We're just finding workarounds anyway to do it, so, you know.
well, we have been because, like for plats, for example, they're,
That's just gonna cause
we
problems.
don't wanna slow it down.
I'm not against
Or,
workarounds, for
um,
sure, so.
And they have given us, you know, like the whole stretch of the project, and sometimes we wanna have checks, like we just wanna do some pre-engineering work, understand where we're at, and then move into construction, so the construction portion for support shouldn't really be.
Yeah, some of these projects
Dive
can
in.
stretch out for a year or two, right? You know, by the time you plan and then, you know, we gotta acquire easements and there's some complexities in there that don't make these projects necessarily super.
I'm okay with 40,000.
Yeah, I'd be okay, so with the middle, the 0 to 40, I would agree with, right? Just the 40 to 100, 40 to 125, I think that's, I could go either way on that. And then, you know, the top number is the top number, right?
Yeah.
125 grand for an RFP versus 100 grand. I mean, yeah, kind of splitting hairs really, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, how many jobs are you gonna have that really fall between 100 and 125? It's either gonna be a lot more or less. That's a pretty specific range. So I'd be okay with even 40 to 125, 125 plus.
Let's do it.
Okay, I did wanna mention that this item normally would have kind of gone to, like, say, the admin and finance committee. But it really affects, but because, you know, this was something that Lori and Justin wanted us to try to make some progress on soon. And these consulting services are generally things we're using for utilities. So that's why I put it on today's agenda, because it
Okay.
affects our master plan, our well work, our engineering services for wells, things that we're working on currently.
Sure.
Okay,
It's not even
you
the
got it.
full brunt of the construction effort yet, this is just getting there, so we don't wanna slow that down, because the actual construction work will have to go to RFP, so.
Exactly. So
There's
that,
going to be an RFP, but.
Yeah, well, and that's the bulk of your cost.
there's gonna be
Exactly.
benefit.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item, we got that one?
Yep.
Next item, source control update.
Yeah, just wanted to, for a few reasons, we wanted to have this item on the agenda. I think there was a request of the finance, admin and finance committee to kind of look at these costs that we pay to the wallet right now to the Wallace Group. Just for background, the source control program is a program that we run to help ensure that businesses that produce a lot of fats, oils and greases are intercepting those and they're not going down the sewer pipelines where they can create blockages and spills and things and more maintenance and things of that nature. That's the fog part of it. That's maybe a third or, we affect a number of customers that have these grease trap or grease interceptors that they're required to have them. And then the other half of the program, or 2/3 of it, is our industrial discharge program. And that is, it sort of depends on the type of industry that is connected to the system. But essentially, the goal is to ensure that we're not having dischargers discharge waste that can either upset our wastewater plant or that we cannot treat to a certain level. And in Templeton, those kind of fall into two buckets. People who can segregate their high-strength wastewater and haul it off. And most of our boutique wineries are in a program like that. It's called a self-haul. And they take wash water, barrel wash water in winery waste. And they're supposed to put it in vessels and then take it back to the vineyard where the grapes were grown. And they can use it for dust control or irrigation or whatever. And that's a program that's been in place for a long time. The other way of going about it or complying with it is to have if you have a high strength wastewater, is to have a pre-treatment system. And we have a couple of those, 3, I think, that have permits with the district, and then they operate these systems and they supply monthly or depends on the permit data that shows that they're treating to an acceptable level. Those are more complicated and we have some that are in better shape than others in terms of meeting those permit requirements. So that's the source control program. We outsource the public education and inspections and enrollment of those programs to the Wallace Group as in a consulting role. And some of this enforcement advisory, enforcement, and then the district ends up with, when we have enforcement, like more than education, if we have enforcement, we end up having to get involved and issue notice, administrative orders or things of that nature. So this program was something, we've had a FOG program in place for a long time. We had a semblance of an industrial discharge program, but it wasn't super effective. We noticed that we had businesses that were kind of regularly violating our requirements. And so about 3 years ago, we worked with the Wallace Group, who does this for a number of clients, another number of small agencies like us. And Bill Callahan is the point of contact there, who's the main person who administers the program. And since then, we feel like we've made some pretty good progress in many cases. And want to maintain the program, but it's not cheap. Round dollars, about 50 grand a year to the Wallace Group. Right now, the sewer fund is paying that cost, which means everybody who pays a sewer bill is paying a little piece of those expenses. And the argument at the time anyway was, hey, this should be paid by the sewer fund because the goal of the program is to protect the system, which benefits everybody. However, the costs associated are generally specific to these industries and businesses. But they pay a sewer fee, just like any other business, but the education and stuff is specific to those business types. So, one could argue that, they're enrolled in this program, we have certain costs of administering it, but they're not really paying anything extra to have those, to ensure that those items are taking place. Many businesses have been, pretty cooperative. We didn't have a very active interceptor program, and so when we brought on the Wallace Group, a lot of the restaurants in town were out of compliance, and slowly but surely we're getting them into compliance. I only know of a couple that remain out of compliance on the grease interceptor side. And then on the industrial discharge issues, it's more new enrollees because the wineries change hands a lot. And then we do have some businesses that require quite a bit more time and effort because they have complex issues or their system doesn't work super well. They don't meet the discharge requirements, or they miss a lot of the discharge limits with their system. So twofold, I think we wanted to talk about our approach in terms of this program, and does it make sense to look at other approaches in terms of who would pay the cost of program, whether it's all the sewer customers out of the sewer fund, or maybe a fee to the businesses for participating. That's one, and then the second issue is just our current current businesses that may be out of compliance.
So how many accounts do we have as far as sewer? Is that about
Oh,
3,000 or so?
2,400 or something.
2,400, so 50,000, so it's comes to about $20 a year per
Yeah,
per
maybe.
account approximately. So that's only, it's only a couple of dollars. Okay.
I mean,
Does staff feel it's worth it? I guess I'm looking at you, Lori.
Absolutely, yeah.
you gotta keep the
You
program.
don't really have the time.
They have the ability to kind of pinpoint stuff that if our staff went out there, we would just probably provide them the information, but they would be able to, from
You have
more
experience.
educated eye, to be able to see, because they work with especially wineries in this area.
I've heard
I mean,
their
I-
name
yeah.
before too.
breweries.
I do they do this for Paso? I don't know that they do, but I've seen that name
The
before.
Wallace Group?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, so the Wallace Group does a lot of services, and this is just one of them.
yeah,
They do a lot of other
They've
engineering.
been
services.
around for 1,000 years.
yeah, okay.
So I
Our
don't, to my
previous-
knowledge, they're not doing this for the city of Paso had a dedicated staff member that was doing this for a long time, and I don't really know where that stands today, if
We talked about it the other day because we were approving an auto shop, which is one of those ones with hazardous waste. They don't want it down the drain. So no, I think $50,000 is actually pretty cheap, honestly, like I would think. But so the discussion is, it's 50 grand a year, and each person, there's 24,000 people hooked up. 2,400.
Yeah, 2,400 or so buildings connected to the sewer system.
So $20 a year per
Yeah.
account essentially
Yeah.
to cover the
Yeah.
costs.
I would charge the companies. I mean,
How many companies are enrolled in this or that part of this program? Because
Because the permits are free, correct?
Requested them.
Yeah, maybe 100 or something, just ballparking it, I'm guessing,
Because then that's
restaurants and the.
100 is
They do
now
pay us
5,000.
Have a permit,
500.
They,
500.
like if we have to work with them on a
Yeah.
particular
That's not
permit,
working.
like details, they pay for that.
they covered so like the ones that have pre-treatment permits, these are a very small number. They would have paid a deposit, and that would have covered the cost of developing the permit. But it doesn't cover, that is like a one-time cost. They're not paying they're not paying a regular fee to utilize this program, this pre-treatment, program. We looked at a few options at the time, and we were just trying to get it was viewed as more important at the time to get these folks enrolled
Yeah.
and get the waste, the illicit discharges down to the global system than it was to try to assign costs. But I understand there's
I don't really particularly care who pays for it, but I mean, I think it's very useful, and I guess I would like to visit this every year, because I think when we started with Wallace, there was nothing going on. They were just pouring stuff wherever they wanted. And I think it has improved a lot since we've had the Wallace Group.
Yeah.
And so I would like to continue
Yeah,
at least for another year, and then let's look at it. I mean, hopefully it'll get down to the point where we don't need them anymore.
Well, that's what I was
Yeah.
wondering, but I think with Lori being new, maybe you're concentrating on other things,
Yeah.
maybe as, in
There
another
is
year or
that
so.
effort, like maybe we could lower the effort, but
Yeah.
just that education portion and
Yes.
what he's explaining about these wineries that do change hands, there is that, businesses do change hands every
Yeah.
once in a while, not significantly, but to keep them on to help with that education effort,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
we kind of take over anything that would require,
Yeah.
enforcement.
Yeah, you have to decide which one, you want the
Maybe-
beginning or the end, so.
Well, yeah, they are
so-
kind of filtering information for us that kind of dial it in and be like, hey, they're out of
Yes.
compliance with X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
What's your action? And so it's helping us dial in our responses.
And then,
So,
I know we have a system where we do fine, so I don't know where that
Sure,
stands
I
right now.
can try to explain that. We did, right, yes, the board approved some changes to our code that gave and it gave a guideline for how we would deal with enforcement when the education efforts and warnings didn't produce results. And so what that's really been is a couple of restaurants were really negligent, like we would be there, for months and months, the Wallace Group, reminding them of their efforts, giving them deadlines, and they were not achieving them. And so I believe there's been 2 restaurants where we've issued perhaps 3 fines. One to one restaurant that ultimately did then comply, installed it's a mechanical, it's like something that you'd have to hire a plumber to put in under the sink, typically a grease trap. But it's not free, right? There's a cost associated. So no one wants to do this, or these businesses don't want to do this if they otherwise didn't have to. And then we have one, I'm aware of one restaurant that's also out of compliance. We've issued 2 administrative fines to them. And if they remain out of compliance, I haven't been like, okay, $500 every month because you failed to comply. At some point they've paid a $250 fine, or they've been issued a $250 fine, and then several months later, a $500 fine. We've attempted to collect, in this case, on the district's water bill, and some of the fine money has been collected to the point where I don't think it's a problem, although they're still behind in their account in general, because that's just the nature of this one particular business. The more complicated ones deal with these that have industrial discharge permits, where we have kind of violations that are pretty significant, sometimes as much as 10 or 20 times the limits that they're allowed are being discharged, as if their pretreatment system is not working at all, or working so poorly that it might as well not be there. In that case, we were very cooperative with the business, allowed them to take years to put it in place. And then knowing that they'd have startup issues and challenges. But really after a couple of years of the system being in place, things actually got worse. And so this past year, we've started issuing fines based on violations, the smallest amount of fine that's authorized under the level, and even providing credit if they can get it corrected for the following month with a particular constituent, like a credit back on the fine. And the goal was not to raise money, but to get action.
Yeah, if they don't pay their fines, because I've had this conversation among other things, so they don't pay any fine. You get 20 fines, they just don't pay them. It's
a perfect lead into our.
Great question.
It's a great question, because we have this situation right now where in this one business's case, we began, the first fine was issued in March for violations in November. And they also were issued fines in April for like 3 months worth of violations, December, January, February, and then in May for March. And we're in a sort of cycle where right now it doesn't appear that they're going to climb that. They're going to achieve complete compliance. And that may not be realistic for this business anyway, based on the technology they have. And, at the end of the day, if there were some minor violations, I wouldn't be considering fines if they're working to solve things.
You want to keep them in business.
Yeah, we don't want to chase them out. But this particular business hasn't paid any of those fines. And so my concern is if we don't, if we're unable to collect, if we don't attempt to collect on the fine, then sooner or later, why do they exist? It's like an empty, it's like a,
Idle threat.
Yeah, it's an idle threat. So we have a couple of options, and we were prepared to move forward and actually levy the fine amount on the property tax bill, which is, it looks like we're able to do so. It could be challenged. The challenge with that, or the issues that surround that, are one, it's not the property owner that operates the business, that's a tenant. In this case, the property owner did sign off on the waste discharge permit because we thought we might have issues like this. But we haven't exhausted a lot of efforts, in our ability to get the property taxes is only once a year. The ordinance the board approved has mechanisms for collecting these fines. We can actually record a tax or a lien against the property, but that may never be collected because those only get paid when the property owner sells. You have the ability to consider shutting the board after a hearing, considering shutting off services. That's extreme. That'll run them out of business. I mean, they absolutely need water and sewer services to be in business. So, really, it's not too late to try to collect on the property taxes, but staff kind of felt like, man, is that going to appear too heavy-handed given that we just started this process in March. You know, it's only been a couple of months, you know, maybe we need to step up our invoicing or have more dialogue with the businesses before we take it to that
What?
point.
I think having a conversation with them to let them know you are gonna escalate this and you're gonna make it painful for them. And I think, and I'm not a fan of the government getting involved and I wanna see business operating. But the reason they're getting fines is because they're not in compliance with an environmental issue, right? And because it's an environmental issue in the state of California especially, I think you have to be a little bit heavy-handed, and I think, you know, the property tenant is not the property owner, sure, but the owner is still responsible for making sure the people on their property are following the rules and of the business or whatever is operating on the property. So I think a first round would be doing it through the taxes, but I also say if people are not getting in compliance, and if they don't have the money, I think that's bad, but it's an environmental issue. So you have to make them do it because they need to adhere to the rules that everybody else is adhering to. And if they don't, they cannot operate a business because all they're doing is polluting, right? And I think the tax is a first good try, and if they don't get into compliance after the paying through the tax, then shutting off services is the next step, because some people, especially people who are like, you're not gonna tell me what to do, they might never get in compliance, and then you just keep fining them and they keep just not paying the fine or whatever. Eventually, they're not allowed to operate business within, you know, this area. And maybe that is extreme, but you're paying people a lot of money to make sure they're following the rules, and they apparently either they can't afford the rules or don't care about the rules. My guess, if they're not paying the fine, it's probably a combination of both. So I think that adhering to the tax so that it's a little bit painful, and then after that, taking it to the next step, but having the conversation first, that this is coming. You guys need to, you know, so we're gonna sit down, we're gonna talk about this. We wanna support you, we wanna keep businesses operating, but you have to follow the rules that everyone else is following, even if you don't like them, right? We all follow rules we don't all agree with, right? And everybody else seems to be following them. So that's what I would recommend there. And then as far as the payment goes, it's like less than $2 a year a month per resident. Cause I think if you're gonna have the businesses pay for it, it's a little bit more complex, cause some businesses are an hour a month or whatever it is, and some are 30 hours a month. So why would I pay $500 when it's the other guy costing most of the money, right? So maybe you base that on a metric, but I think for now you just keep it at the $1.75 or whatever it is per month per customer. It's not that much money, right? $2 a month per customer is like $60,000 a year or something like that. So those are my recommendations.
I wouldn't disagree with any of it.
So just so you, the challenge we face with this one particular business is really a matter of timing. The board will consider the property tax levies on July 16th. There's a calendar that's set by the, you know, in order to make the property tax levy, we have to submit this to the county before the property tax bills are generated. So
They have a chance to come to the board and speak.
they would. So, but I would have to essentially issue the notice of public hearing to the business and property owner like now to meet the deadline.
Oh, we have to, as you
I-
mentioned, it's an environmental issue.
I would give them a call first and say, by the way, this notice is
Yeah, I
coming.
attempted to contact him last week, he did not respond.
He's not going to, is my guess.
Well, and it's.
The one thing we need to probably together is reach out to the property owner, cause
Yes.
a lot of the letters, weren't copying the property.
We should
owner.
send a
They
letter
might
to
not
both of
be
them.
Super aware, cause
Yeah.
they're gonna be the one that's
Yes.
notified of this issue, and
I think.
it'll go on their
property owner
tax.
would be
Yep.
key to
I'd
contact.
send any letter I send to the one, I would send to both.
Yeah, we intend to, the property owner and to make matters a little more complicated, the property owner, the involvement of the property owner with this business was with the husband of this husband-wife team. And he was the active property owner of that area, very active actually. And the husband died a few months ago, so the wife is picking up the business and the business side of things. I don't know, I mean, I'm sure she was involved, but she wasn't my primary point of contact previously. And now she, you know, so she may not be very aware of some of the long-term challenges that we've had in this particular case.
So yeah, I think we should do that. So that way definitely before it even comes to the board, the property owner is contacted and notified. But yeah, it's an environmental issue. State is putting a lot of pressure on us to make sure that we keep this under control for everyone, the whole community, and then when you have one particular business that's causing a lot of problem, then hey, it's maybe push us out of compliance for the whole town, that could be a problem.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think it's I couldn't say that we're out of compliance because of this one business, but I could say with certainty that it's not, yeah, it's a significant, it's a contributor
Yeah.
to those.
How much would it cost them, do you know, estimated just how much it would cost them to get in compliance just on their own?
I heard a number of like another 300,000.
okay, 300,000.
Yeah, this is a,
The system that they chose, that they ended up going
It's a
with,
big.
didn't
I think
address,
I know what it is.
didn't
It's a big-
address
it's a-
their issues. There's a long story
yeah,
behind it, and I think,
Here's the
it's
thing,
complex, cause then the businesses also told us that they're gonna be moving their production.
Yeah.
So we're stuck, like, when is that gonna happen?
and the amount, just so everyone's clear, the
Yeah.
amount of late fines, if we even call them late, is they were doing 30 days, so probably only the first few were
well,
late,
and that's why you gotta shut off.
are about $3,000.
They get the taxes, and then the next time that this comes up, they're gonna lose water and sewer because like you said, what, you got $5,000 in fines, but it's gonna cost me $300,000 to fix it. I'll just keep paying the $5,000, right? I can do that, a lot of 60 times before, in 60 years before you end up recouping it. So I think
Yeah, the issue really isn't so much that their system can't meet the thing, it's that it went off the rails. It was,
they didn't maintain it.
yeah, it was being on.
Well, I mean, some of the constituents, I've been told,
That's,
might not ever be able to meet, but the big ones, they should. The BOD and TSS, so,
Well, yeah, I think we beat that one pretty good. but-
okay, so is there a consensus among the committee then that you want, that the goal is to assess this
Actual?
on at your July 16th board meeting and after we contact the property owner?
Yes.
Yes.
And then they'd be issued formal letters. Yeah, I don't expect this will be a quiet issue, just so you.
Well,
Good.
well, we gotta see their point.
This is,
Okay. You guys be the bad guys. Okay, items, Items-
I'm sorry, before we go on, Wallace Group is gonna be at the meeting as well to explain to us the process.
I'll need to coordinate that.
Okay.
I would definitely have them there and let them know what the impact of them being in violation and non-compliance does to the area.
And also all the different steps that they've taken.
Yeah, but the issue that would be before you is assessing that on July 16th, you're gonna have the board will have a public hearing to deal with all the property tax levies. There's thousands of them, right? We levy every parcel for Measure A. We measure lots of parcels for CFD, late water payments, weed abatement. This would just be another
Okay.
one of those. But I'll have a better sense after speaking with the property owner
Okay.
of how this is gonna go. Our goal is to just get payment. I don't wanna levy the property.
Yeah.
We want
Well,
payments.
the real goal is to get them in compliance.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah.
That's-
oh,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's, I.
Because eventually, if they just keep paying the fines and don't follow the rules, there's gotta be some repercussion, and if that repercussion is they're not gonna get water and sewer,
Yeah.
then
Well,
that's.
in coordination with, the Wallace Group folks, we have elevated what they have to do to report to us and showing, very distinct steps forward. They have improved slightly, but there's been over the years kind of looks good, then it goes out of compliance again. So we want consistency. So
Oh,
we don't yet trust.
I wouldn't, okay.
That's what
Well, okay, the next item, last item, well,
You hope so.
solar PV project at Creekside.
Yeah, I was really hoping to have something more robust for you today. The board members will recall that we've been tasked with trying to determine whether a solar PV project would make sense to offset district utility costs. And I see electricity costs with no particular specific site or priority in mind, although the biggest bills fall under the water and the wastewater accounts, right? That's where we have pumping costs and whatnot. And the solar PV has changed quite a few times over the years. the attractiveness of it. There are, and I've done a few of these kinds of projects with prior employers. And the way that most of the solar energy folks work with public agencies is these are done on a design build basis at kind of no risk to the entity. And the company develops a project at their own cost. And then ultimately, at some point, you enter into an agreement for them to construct it and to help offset energy. And historically, this was done like with rooftop solar, just like you might do it at home, where every site you'd have solar energy that would help offset the power costs at that particular site, whether it's a building or a well or a lift station or whatever. A couple things. One, the net energy metering has become a lot less attractive in California over the last few years, where like I have solar at my house, and when I produce power that I don't use, I get a decent chunk. PG&E pays me for that power, and it provides a significant part of my sort of financial benefits of payback of going solar, because you typically don't use the power the second you generate it. Under the new net energy metering, the payback is like a quarter of what it used to be, and so that return just isn't there. So it's harder to make solar pencil. For our, in Templeton CST's case specifically, most of our large energy using sites don't have any associated ground space. So for example, we have wells where we can have significant power use, but the well's on like a 30 by 30 easement, no space for solar PV. We have lift stations, but they're on a developed site. There's no extra land to add solar arrays. We do have buildings like this where I could put a rooftop or something on like this building or Parks and Rec. Knowing earlier this year, I did reach out to several of these solar power companies, and our PG&E bill here is not it's a big check that we write, but to the folks that play this game, we're a small entity. And the larger businesses, the ones that do this internationally have like minimum project sizes, and like Engie for one, that's a French company, and they bought up other businesses in this country, and so they're kind of a big player, and they target municipalities. They have like an $8 million minimum project threshold size. They won't do things that are less than that because they can't make money at it, because they're a big outfit. So I've tried to get proposals from Engie on multiple occasions, and they've not. They won't give me one for Templeton even now. I had another contact that was interested in doing something at the wastewater plant, and the changes in the solar rules have essentially they're no longer interested. I did get a reference to look at a smaller company called MCore that does some sub consulting for Engie, sub work for Engie, and they do a little bit of this on their own too, and they're willing to do smaller projects. And so I described our situation, and the PG&E or the PUC has a program that's been in place for about 10 years now called RESBCT, and everything with PG&E and the PUC is complicated, but essentially what that program is like virtually connecting meters. And when you do that, you can build one array and connect multiple meters to the same array, although you don't get full offset like you would if it was true net metering at like your house, because you're still relying on the PG&E distribution network to distribute that power. So the payback is not as attractive. It's generally not something that works, but it might just work in our case because we have you can put up to 50 meters on one array. We have all these little tiny uses, right? We have like this building, and it's not tiny, but it's not very big in the whole scheme of things. And, well sites and other places where solar arrays are not possible. So I actually received a proposal about a month ago from MCore that, at first glance is financially doable. It has payback, under 10-year payback, which is decent for solar now. And the pricing is attractive, but it's not flushed out. It was just like a first glance. And so it's not something that I would share with you. It's got a bunch of errors in it, and it's not flushed out. And so I've been working with MCOR a few times over the past month to try to bolster the proposal, so there's something more robust that looks like it could actually be done. And the concept would be to construct at like the Creekside site where we have 50 acres, including land that we're not, not likely to use for much valuable. An array that's maybe somewhere 0.8 to 1 megawatt, so a decent size. It's about 3 acres of array. Then connected to up to 50 meters. And conceptually, this can pencil, but I don't wanna, it's too soon to say we have a project. But I wanted to update you. I was hoping that I'd actually have something more from MCOR, but I don't. If I can't proceed with them, I met in contact last week that another smaller company that might be willing to do a project like this. The issue really is keeping costs super low because the payback goes away if you get complicated. Like, years ago, I was involved in a lot of, we did solar parking shades and rooftop stuff, and none of that stuff's attractive anymore. It's gotta be ground mount, simple, in order to keep the costs down so that you can may have a return. I mean, so that's kind of that's the concept. At that site, actually, it could be a little more complicated than I described because it could be a combination of both traditional net metering. It would be a concept of both traditional net metering because we do have power usage at the site. We're gonna ultimately end up with, we have 2 wells there now. We're gonna have 2 or 3 more, and so we could consolidate those meters and do direct offset for that particular that usage, in which case you kind of get full credit, generation and distribution credit, not just generation. So more to come. If I can get something that has a good payback, 6-7 year payback, then I plan on bringing it forward. If I cannot, I'll let you know that I can't get something attractive. If the goal is to save money, if the goal is environmental or you're willing to pay more to have solar, then that's a different story. But if the goal is financial, then we need an attractive payback.
So I have a degree in solar energy from a tech school that is no longer in business, but I went to school to build them, and I built a megawatt, and I built a few 400,000 or 500,000 watt arrays, and this was obviously I built one for Berkshire Hathaway at the Salton Sea. Anyway, that was ground mount, and I think everything has to do with the business case and the ROI. I do have a recommendation. REC Solar is who I worked out of SLO. We did I think it was a 1 megawatt array out at the Salton Sea, and they were good to work with. They were a design build firm. They can take it all on. They're out of San Luis Obispo. So just a contact or someone I would recommend reaching out to, because they do all of it in-house, and it was a $1.2 million. I think we ended up being like $1. This was a while ago. It was a little under a megawatt. It was like $1.36 a watt installed price, right? And I don't know what that looks like now, but I think if
About $3 a watt is what I'm.
yeah, and if there's also any government subsidies.
Yeah, well, the subsidy is about 30%. We get through the tax, so there's a 30% federal rebate essentially that makes this more attractive.
I would agree with you because for you don't have a single source taking a lot of power where you could put the array at the same time. That makes it difficult. If that new program works out and you can pencil it out, I absolutely think it's a good idea. But only if the ROI is there, because then you get another 15 years of, reduced bill or less bill. But again, it's got to be on the business case. So that's
What's the life of these systems?
About 25.
life of a roof.
They'll produce power longer, but what ends up happening is you have an efficiency loss.
Yeah.
And then you end up with maintenance costs. It's not free. Solar's not free. And we have to pay people to water.
Back in a decent amount of time.
Yeah,
You have to replace it.
less than 10 years, if you get it paid off, then I would say, I think your ROI, like you said, 6, 7, 8 years. If you could pencil out an 8-year max ROI, then that gives you 12. And you do have to wash them. You have to clean them. Aside from that, maybe a module goes out once in a while. Inverters rarely. It's a little hotter here, so they're outside. They get a little warm. They can go bad. But I would say overall, if you can make that price work out, then absolutely do it. If it's going to be 12 years, then I wouldn't.
Yeah,
Just pay. You got Diablo down the street. You just pay the nut and call it a day. I mean, they're not that the power's coming from Diablo.
I just wanted to mention that that because of how we're set up and where our power is being used, the traditional way of going about this is not likely to work for us because.
I understand nowadays they're going around and saying that they want you to sign up for solar, but they're also adding to it that they give you, not give you, but they sell you a battery so that you can store
Yes, you
your
have to do
own
battery.
electricity.
to make sense.
So,
So it doesn't get wasted. But also, I'm kind of leery of solar. The high school did the thing over the parking lot, and that company went bankrupt.
Yeah, there's been a
You
lot
know,
of changes.
And the school district,
There's
back in the time, they were pretty sharp people. I mean, it wasn't, you know, wasn't like they were talking to me and I said, oh yeah, go ahead and do it. That's why there's dirt over there and I'm not even sure the solar works. Panel
Yeah,
work
it's
up
so
over
dirty.
there, so it's really a mess.
Unfortunately, I think there's gonna be a lot of solar, if this NEMS, if the net energy metering doesn't improve, I mean, there may not be a case for solar, economic case for solar energy in California.
Yeah.
On a rooftop scale anymore.
and for what you guys need to do, my parents live up in Nevada City. They have 2 Tesla power walls and then the generator and solar, and they got a rebate program where if the power goes out more than this many days a year and you have solar and you have a generator, then we'll give you these things. It doesn't actually, 2 of them was $40-something thousand. Now they got them for free,
Yeah.
but what it does is they have it set up with the PG&E rate plan that the rate is more between 3 and 9, but less outside that. So the grid and the solar charges the batteries till 3 o'clock and runs the house, whatever's extra. And then the house runs off the batteries between that time, and then it goes back to charging off the grid. And to be honest, it doesn't even get them to nothing. So you're at the scale you need to do, batteries is
Yeah.
not
Yeah, and
likely.
it doesn't really, again, that concept for homes works well, because you generate the power, you store it, use it in the same place. In our case, we can't generate power where we use it in most cases, right? We don't have space. So, it doesn't work, it's likely not gonna be compatible with the RESBCT program. But I'll keep you posted, we'll keep moving forward, and if we can develop a concept that makes some sense, then I'll bring it forward. But if it ends up with an unattractive return, and it doesn't make sense, then, you know, it's a project for another time.
Sounds good.
Sounds.
Okay, the last item on the agenda is future agenda items. So is there any items that any of the members would like to see on a future agenda? Good luck.
I'm here to support you guys, so.
Do you guys want an update on the,
Things like that, maybe like update for the permit for the wastewater.
Wastewater plant?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know what the state requirements are, where we stand.
Yeah, we're in a 2-year review period right now,
Oh, okay.
and so, but our permit is our information is being reviewed.
Okay.
And what were you gonna say?
I was gonna ask if this is a place where we bring updates for projects, or do?
Yes, we could.
Okay, so
but-
if we could kind of give a snapshot of where we're at on the major projects, that would
Sounds
be
good.
of use, so that
Absolutely.
the last minute
Do we
turnout,
actually have a minute?
decided. Something like that, we could, do that. And how often do we meet
As needed.
as the,
So
okay,
you could put it at the end, like you just have an agenda item for updates from engineers.
Yes, I could.
At the planning commission, they have them, they call them staff comments. And the staff
Right.
comments is usually gives updates on the, the 46 interchange or whatever it is, and it's a spot that he's got a list of things he brings
You
up.
have your staff report though too,
yeah.
during our board, for our board meetings, yeah, that's what, and typically.
But only
so-
the
Yeah,
items.
it would be an opportunity to kind of chat about things, so
Yeah.
if you wanted to.
This-
So
this-
it's up to you guys.
Yeah, the committees meet, as needed, 3 to 5 times a year. They're not on a set schedule. If there's nothing urgent, it may not be for a little bit. If there was something that was more pressing and you wanted to set a date, if you had some hard things you wanted to pick another date, you could do so. So,
Yeah, I think when we hear about the FEMA participation on that one, then we should probably
Yes.
have a conversation, yeah.
yeah, and actually, I'll have that item's gonna come to the board in August.
Oh, okay.
How we plan on proceeding with.
Oh, okay.
with,
We have updates. Okay.
Yeah, nothing super, no, don't get too excited. We don't have check with FEMA, but we have a plan to
Oh,
build
yeah.
make progress follow.
Meter your excitement.
Okay.
to get involved.
But we don't have to just press pause entirely. We can keep working.
I see, sounds good. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you, Rory, for attending.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Good seeing you again.
Hopefully